working our way through the idea of the home. And we talked about marriage a couple weeks, and we talked about younger children 2 weeks ago. And we want to talk about older children, young people, teenagers this week. And my children are 11 and 9, and so automatically I'm disqualified from telling you how to parent your teenagers because I have no experience in it. So I've done two things that I hope are helpful. One, I've asked a wide spectrum of people in our church, both currently and formerly, to give me some advice about what's practical advice on raising teenagers. And I've tried to summarize some of the thoughts they gave me. If you'd be interested in having more extensive notes, some people wrote a couple pages. I can just send you about 10 pages worth of advice for teenagers that you can look over. But I've summarized some of those thoughts and kind of boiled them down to 11 pieces of advice, because everybody does 10, right? So I thought, let's do something a little different. I'm gonna go for 11 pieces of advice. And then in the sermon this morning, instead of giving you my thoughts or my views, I want to share somebody who does have authority for us, which is God's Word. That's not somebody, it's something. But I want to share God's Word and what it says. Specifically, as you're thinking about and looking at the notes, the entire book of Proverbs is written to young people. The entire book of Proverbs is written to help a young person become a wise person. That's the goal. And so as I was going through my teenage years, I was bathed in the book of Proverbs. I mean, it was constantly, either I was reading it or my parents were reading it to me, or my parents were making me, or at times paying me money to read it. I mean, whatever trick, whatever motivation, whatever way they could get me reading and thinking about Proverbs, they used it. And so as I went through my teenage years, Proverbs was always in our house. And as I look 2 years now, actually like a year and a couple of months, Seattle's going to be 13 years old and entering into these wonderful years. And Proverbs is becoming more and more in our minds. And so I want to look at some principles that Proverbs lays out for us. If you've read through Proverbs, you probably have realized a lot of it is just like popcorn. Like a proverb flies this way, and then a proverb flies that way, and then a proverb flies the other way. They're flying all over the place. And one may have nothing to do with the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. The Proverbs literally can just be completely random. However, that's mostly from chapter 10 to chapter 29 that the Proverbs are like that. That section of Proverbs, 10 to 29, the bulk of it is random Proverbs, wise sayings. But the first 9 chapters of Proverbs really has a very coherent theme, a very coherent idea of, let me tell you what I'm going to tell you about. Let me give you a picture of where this book is going. Look at Proverbs 1. I just want to read the first 7 verses together. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. And he's going to say several infinitives: to know, to perceive, to receive, to give. He's going to tell you why he wrote these Proverbs, why this collection of Proverbs is brought together. To know wisdom and instruction. That's one of the reasons for this book. To perceive the words of understanding. To receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. To give prudence to the simple. This book of Proverbs is to bring simple people, and we're going to talk about that. Simple means inexperienced. People who don't have a lot of experience in life. Guess what is a big group of people who don't have a lot of experience in life? Are you tracking with me? Teenagers. Teenagers are inexperienced at life. They're going into life. They're leaving a home where life is kind of done for them, and they're beginning this stage where they're doing life for themselves. They're entering into it without a lot of experience. And if you're 20-something, guess what? You're still in this inexperienced phase of life. And some of us are 30, 40, 50 years old, and we shift either jobs or careers, or maybe you come to Germany for the first time, and you go right back to this simple, You're inexperienced at living in Germany. You're inexperienced at being in the army. You're inexperienced at being in this unit. And so there's all phases of life that we go into it simple. We go into it inexperienced. And part of the reason of Proverbs is to give prudence to the simple. To give them, prudence is knowing the right thing to do at the right time. To the young man, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. That in a nutshell gives you where he's headed with this book, what he's going to teach us. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now I said chapters 1 through 9 are a coherent theme. We just looked at the very beginning of 1. Can you turn to Proverbs chapter 9 with me? In Proverbs 9, he's summing up this opening instruction of what Proverbs is about. He starts in chapter 1, he says, this is what I'm going to teach you. Then he kind of shows it, and he gives you pictures of it, both with wisdom and folly. And then in Proverbs 9, he gives this ultimate showdown between Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. And the picture is, let's say this group over here will give you wisdom. Will be nice, okay? So this group over here is wisdom. You know what's left for you guys. This group over here is folly. And imagine all these chairs in the middle are gone, and I'm the simple person walking down the middle. And the picture in Proverbs 9 is you've got simple people just walking along life, and over here from this side of the room, you get this cry of saying, hey, come over here. Come have dinner with me. I want to teach you some things. I want to tell you some things. And as I'm listening and looking over here at wisdom, I also over here from this side of the room hear folly say, hey, come here. I stole some bread. Come here. I stole some food. It's awesome. You don't have to do anything for it. Come eat with me. And the young person, the simple person is walking in the middle, hearing wisdom, hearing folly, and they're both calling out for him and for her. They're both calling out saying, come over here. Come listen to me. Come follow me. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. Notice the character of wisdom. Wisdom does the work. Wisdom goes through the effort. There's no shortcuts. She slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries out from the highest place of the city, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. Now, put your finger on 9:4. Literally, put your finger on 9:4. And now look with your eyes at 9:16. This is folly. And what is folly saying? Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And as for him who lacks understanding, she says to him. Do you see that? 9:4 and 9:16. They're both crying out to the same people. Wisdom and folly are both trying to get the attention of the same person. So in chapter 9, wisdom and folly call out to the young, to the simple, and they ask them, and in essence, what you're going to see as you go through Proverbs is they force them to choose a path. What are you going to do? You see in the background of the handout, you've got a roadblock sign with arrows 2 ways. You can no longer continue to be simple. It's time to choose. Are you going to choose wisdom or are you going to choose folly? Wisdom says, I've done all of the work. I've built my own house. I've slaughtered my own meat. I've mixed my own wine. And if you come after me, I will teach you to do all of that kind of work. Folly, on the other hand, look at what she says. Whoever is simple, verse 16, let him turn in here. And as for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, stolen water is sweet. Now, I'm a preacher, and so I'm supposed to throw stones at folly and tell you how bad she is. But we can agree with her there, can't we? Stolen water is sweet. It makes no sense to deny what she's saying. It is much easier to steal water than to carry it. It's much easier to steal water than to pay for it. So folly comes to young people and she says, wisdom is going to make you build your own house. Wisdom is going to make you slaughter your own meat. Wisdom is going to make you mix your own wine. I can steal it for you. I can give it to you without work, without effort, without cost, without sacrifice. Stolen water is sweet. And bread eaten in secret. And the whole idea is you're doing something that you know people shouldn't know about. You're eating bread that you know people shouldn't know that you have this bread. Bread eaten in secret is pleasant. So you've got these two ladies crying out for the attention of your teenager. Teens, you've got a choice every day, all day, that's presented to you of wisdom and folly. Soldiers, this doesn't stop when you hit 19. There's nothing magical about 20. There's nothing magical about 30. There's nothing magical about 40. This is a choice between wisdom and folly that goes on and on and on. So what's at the heart of this choice between this side and that side? Again, we read it in the beginning. I said 1 to 9, he's laying this out for you. So he tells you in the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. In chapter 9, verse 10, right between what wisdom tells you and what folly tells you, he says, let me tell you how to make this choice. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So he's saying this choice begins with your attitude towards God. Whether you go to folly or whether you go to wisdom depends on how you view God. That will decide which way you go to. And we talk a lot about what does this mean, the fear of the Lord? What does that word fear mean? For us in this context, let's think about it simply like this. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, and the fear of the Lord means knowing that we don't have wisdom and that God does. Fear of the Lord is saying, God is God, I am not God. God is all-powerful, I am not all-powerful. God is all-wise, I am not all-wise. God is holy, I am not holy. And as you understand these things, and as your eyes of God says, this is who God is, and this is who I am, the fear of the Lord says, God has everything that I want and that I need. So I begin a pursuit of God. I begin a pursuit of His wisdom, of His understanding, of His ways. This is the foundational decision between choosing folly and choosing wisdom. At the heart of a pursuit of wisdom is a humility that says, I don't have wisdom on my own in myself. It is outside of me. Are you following that? I don't have wisdom. Someone else, something else. God has wisdom, I do not. And right there, we lose most people. And I can tell, preaching, this is interesting, I can tell I'm losing some of you right here, right now. Because I'm telling you that you don't have wisdom and that God has wisdom. And already I'm seeing some of you, yeah, I'm done with this sermon. And you're choosing wisdom and folly. Wisdom says, I don't have wisdom. There is a wisdom outside of me that I need to find. And the whole picture in these first 9 chapters is this pursuit, that wisdom has to be pursued. Wisdom has to be hunted. Wisdom has to be gone after. Look at chapter 2. First couple verses. My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you. You have to receive them. You have to treasure them so that you incline your ear to wisdom. Your ear has to be purposefully and intentionally tuned in to find and hear wisdom. And then look at verse 3. If you cry out for discernment. Now, you need to mark this. This is a fundamental difference between this and this. This is a fundamental difference between wisdom and folly. Wisdom has to be cried out for. Wisdom has to be tuned into. Wisdom has to be pursued. It has to be listened to. If you lift up your voice. So the picture is of someone wailing because of their desperation to get wisdom. Of someone crying and yelling in a search for it. Verse 4, if you seek her, as you would seek silver, if you search for her as you would search for hidden treasures. You get that picture? That this becomes an obsession, it becomes a passion, it becomes a all-consuming desire. I don't have wisdom. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what to do. I don't know what is right. Someone else does, and I want to find that. So you go after God, you fear the Lord, and you say, God, you have wisdom, I don't. I want to know you. I want to know your word. I want to know what you have to give to me. Knowing that we don't have wisdom and that God does. When that fire, that passion lights in your heart, then your attitudes change. And Proverbs says there's a way to tell whether that passion is burning in someone's heart or it's not burning in someone's heart. There's a test. You know what the test is? The test to find out if you have that passion for wisdom burning in your heart, if you have that desire inside of you, is allow someone to correct you. Allow someone to rebuke you, to come alongside of you and saying, what you're doing is wrong, you need to do this instead. Proverbs over and over and over, in your minds, let me say it 50 more times, okay? Tells us that your response to correction tells everybody around you whether you are hunting after wisdom or whether you're a fool who hates wisdom. Look back at verse 7, chapter 1, verse 7. If you're in chapter 2, just look over. We already read, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord, understanding that God has wisdom and I don't, sets you off on a hunt for it, sets you off on a pursuit of it. And you desire it and you seek for it as silver. You go after the wisdom of God. And then look at that next phrase. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools despise it. They hate it. Let's continue filling out the notes. Knowing that we don't have wisdom and that God does, a wise young person will listen to correction, and a wise young person will learn from mistakes. One of my mom's favorite proverbs, I've told you this before, was Proverbs 12:1. Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge. Guess who was giving a lot of instruction to me in my life? My mom gave a lot of instruction to me. And she reminded me, when you love the instruction I give to you, you love knowledge. And then she reminded me of the second part of this. But he who hates correction, in the New King James, he who hates correction is stupid. In the King James, which my mom would quote, he who hates correction is brutish. She would say, do you know what a brute is, Duane? No. A brute is a donkey. If you don't listen to me, you're dumber than a donkey. Those were my mom's words over and over and over again. And when I hated the correction she gave me, she would look at me and say, Duane, you are being dumber than a donkey. Because I'm correcting you, I'm instructing you, and teenagers, somewhere around 11, 12, 13, they take a lesson. They take a course. I don't know if they teach each other the course, but you're so stupid, why are you talking to me face? They learn how to make that face of, you know? Of, you've got no idea what you're talking about. Why are you bothering me? I know what I'm doing. Be quiet and leave me alone. Every parent knows it, that face. Solomon knows it. And Solomon tells his son, and I'm telling you, when you make that face, you're being dumber than a donkey. You're being stupid. You're saying, I don't want wisdom. I don't want instruction. I don't want to find it. I'm not seeking for it. I'm not thirsty. I'm not hungry. I'm not passionate about pursuing wisdom. Leave me alone and let me be foolish. A wise young person will listen to correction. A wise old person will listen to correction. That's what's amazing. Go back to chapter 9. I'm sorry we're flipping all over these first 9 chapters. Go back to chapter 9. Right before he says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In verse 8, let's start at B. So Proverbs 9:8, B means the second part of the verse. Rebuke a wise man and what? If you rebuke a wise old man, a wise old woman, a wise young woman, a wise young man, you tell them what they're doing wrong and what they should be doing instead, they will love you for it. Isn't that amazing? Why? Because they have the fear of the Lord that says wisdom is outside of me. I don't have it intrinsically. I am searching for it. I want it. I am pursuing it like silver and gold. And if you're going to come and tell me where it is, if you're going to come and correct me and say what you're doing is foolish and this is wise, then I love you for doing that for me. I love you for giving me that information, for correcting me. Now some of you parents want to nudge your teenagers at this point in the sermon. But could your teenager nudge you right back about the way you take correction at work? The way you take correction Sundays from your pastor? The way you take correction from them when they point out something that you're doing wrong? Do you have a passion for wisdom? Do you have a passion to know what is right, to pursue and say, I want to know right? And if someone's going to correct me, if someone's going to point me in the right direction, I will kiss them for it. I will love them. Look at verse 9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. It says there's no such thing as a wise person who stops learning and says, yay, I've got it. I've reached it. No one has to teach me anything anymore. I don't have to learn anymore. I don't have to listen anymore because I've achieved wisdom. The marks of a wise person is that they still want to learn, that they still listen to correction. They never get to a point where they've said, no one can tell me what to do anymore because I've figured it all out. Anybody who comes to them and says, I think you're wrong, I think you need to change, I think something's wrong, their ears are open at every stage of life. Even after you make NCO, you still listen to people. You still are open to correction. A wise young person will listen to correction and they will learn from mistakes. Have you heard the proverb that a dog returns to, a fool is like a dog that returns to its, yeah, you've heard it. So something the dog didn't agree with it. It made a mistake and its body vomited this stuff out of its mouth. And then the dog says, I should go back and check that out because there's probably some good stuff in there as well. And we've all had dogs, well, maybe not all of us, but those of us who have had dogs have seen this happen. And you're like, it was bad the first time, it's going to be bad the second time. If your body expunged it from your body once, you don't need to put it back down again. And so Solomon takes this picture that all of us have seen to say a fool will do something that causes bad consequences once, and like a dog, doesn't even think about it, goes back to the same thing again. Refuses to learn from his or her mistakes. But a wise person will make a mistake and will sit down and say, why did that happen? What did I do? What went wrong? How did I cause that? And what can I do differently in the future? It's interesting, I was reading through Plato's account of Socrates' defense when they accused him before the city of Athens. They accused him of corrupting the youth. They accused him of denying the gods. And he had to give a defense. It's called an apology. So Socrates' apology. And in that apology is that famous line. He's telling them, what should I offer as my punishment? I don't have any money, so you can't find me because I don't have any money. You could exile me and send me somewhere else, but if you, my own countrymen, hate me and you want to put me to death, You send me to another country, they're going to hate me as well. They're going to want to kill me too. You could tell me just to be quiet and keep my thoughts to myself. Because he was constantly questioning people. He was constantly taking people's wisdom and showing that they didn't have wisdom. And people don't like that because they hate correction. So he said, you could tell me to be quiet, and you could tell me that I shouldn't ask questions anymore. And then he gave that famous line. Anybody know what's coming? But a life that is not examined is not worth living for a human being. So he says, you could tell me just to be quiet, but living a life and not asking questions, not examining what I think, not examining what I believe, not examining what you believe, not examining what you think, we're humans. We're higher than that. We should be asking questions. But that really comes down to a very difficult part of life, is forcing yourself to look at yourself and ask questions and say, why am I doing this? Why do I believe this? Why are the people around me doing this? You examine your own presuppositions. You examine your own assumptions. And that's what a wise person, most people have no interest in that. Athens had no interest in that. And eventually they allowed Socrates to drink poison so that he was no longer forcing them to ask questions about themselves. General populace loves to go the way of foolishness, of saying, I just do what I do, I think what I think, no one asks me why I think what I think. Don't force me to defend what I think, what I do, what I believe. Just, it is what it is. And if you do, in these days, you're called a hater, right? If you ask somebody, why are you doing what you're doing? Defend it. Explain it. You just do you and I'll do me. And Socrates wasn't okay with doing you and doing me. A self-examined life, a life that is not examined, is not worth living in his mind. And so he drank the poison instead of living a life where you just accept and go along and don't ask questions. Wisdom, this choice for wisdom, you have to hunt after it. And then there's all sorts of, in chapter 4 it says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. And with all you're getting, get understanding. So you have to seek it, you have to get it. And then once you get it, it says, hold on to it. Grab it. Don't let it go. Don't let it out of your grip. Foolishness is the exact opposite. A foolish young person is their own God. You see, it starts right back at the same place. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I am not God, God is God. I am not wise, God is wise. Therefore, I will pursue that wisdom. But a foolish person, it says in Psalms, the fool says in his heart, what? There is no God. There is no outside wisdom. There is no outside holiness and righteousness that I have to pursue. I am God. I am wise. I am powerful. So my own thoughts are just as valid as your thoughts. And if you dare come to me and you dare tell me that I'm wrong and you're right, I will hate you for it. This same passage where he says, rebuke a wise man and he will love you. So we're looking at 9, 7, 8, and 9. Right between this account of the wise woman calling out for the simple person and the fool and folly calling out for the simple person, right in the middle it says, he who corrects a scoffer, a mocker, a fool, gets shame for himself. And he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. So he says, a wise person, you rebuke a wise person, and they will turn around and kiss you because you're helping them get what they want. You're helping them become wise, and they're passionate about that. You want to know who a fool is? Do you want to see a fool? Correct someone and watch them get angry. Watch them get defensive. Watch them start throwing stones back at you. Watch them start attacking you personally because of something you talked to them about principally. You understand? You bring up a principle, you bring up a subject, and they just start, well, you're ugly. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm talking to you about how you did this job. You see what I'm saying? They attack you because you have attacked their God. You have blasphemed their God. You have said their God is not all wise. You have said their God is not all powerful. And like a fundamentalist, they will come back after you. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself. He who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. A foolish young person, a foolish old person, is their own God and their own wisdom, and therefore they despise wisdom and instruction. So parents and teenagers, let me talk to you just for a second. I believe, I don't have teens, so you can write this off if you want. I believe that parents only have a limited amount of influence in their teenager's life. Teenagers, I believe you have the choice to hate or to love your parents' correction. Your parents can do so much to try to help you, to try to give you wisdom, and you have the choice, you have the power, you have the ability to listen or to ignore, to love it or to hate it. And your parents cannot force you to become wise. Your parents cannot force you to make good decisions. They cannot make them for you. They cannot force you to make them. Now, physically, there might be some things they force you to do or not do, but ultimately, even in doing the thing they're forcing you to do, like some of you might be here this morning because your parents forced you to be here this morning. They said, this is a good, wise thing. You will come with me. But inside, you can be a fool sitting here this morning in a place where you're supposed to be trying to get wisdom. You can ignore, you can close your ears, you can close your heart. And you can choose foolishness no matter what your parents try to get you to do. So this is some of the ways that we all, including young people, do that. Look at Proverbs chapter 1. Wisdom is personified. So wisdom starts talking to us. And she says, she cries out in the chief concourses, at the openings of the gates in the city. She speaks her words. So I'm at Proverbs 1:22. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Listen to me. Turn. Surely I will pour out my spirit upon you. I will make my words known to you. I have called and you refused. I have stretched out my hand and you ignored it. Because you disdained all my counsel and would have none of my rebuke, I also will laugh. And there's the implication there in verse 25. Because you disdain it, you look on it and you smirk and you laugh at my counsel. I too will have a good laugh. But my laugh will come at your calamity. Because you mocked my wisdom, I will mock when your terror comes. When your terror comes like a storm and your destruction comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer them. They will seek me diligently then, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge, and because at this pivotal moment, walking down the middle of the street, they did not choose the fear of the Lord. They did not choose to say, God is God and I am not God. They chose to say, I am my own God. To quote a poem, I am the captain of my own fate. They would have none of my counsel. They despise my every rebuke. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their own way, and they will be filled to the full with their own fancies. For the turning of the way of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear or evil. Let me highlight 3 things for you. When you correct a fool, teenagers, listen to me, please. Socrates said, examine your own life. Look at yourself. Look at how you respond. If you're a fool, this is how you will respond to correction. You will hate it and you will get angry. You will hate it when your parents tell you the friends you're hanging out with are not the good friends for you. You will get angry at them because they're trying to correct and change what you're doing. You will hate when people tell you you're wrong. You will hate when you have to change the way you think to line up with the way wisdom speaks. Or if they've progressed enough, they've gotten beyond anger and hatred, and then you become so full of your own wisdom, of your own pride. And I'm talking to teenagers, but this is all of us. You smirk and you laugh at the foolish ideas of these people who don't know as much as you do. Your old-fashioned parents, your old-fashioned sergeant or teacher. How can they be so stupid? They don't know the things that I know. They haven't seen all the things that I've seen. They're so, and I have to be careful. My parents are turning 70 and 75 this year. So they'll ask me technology things, or they'll mention technology things, and how can you think that's the way an iPhone works? But there is so much wisdom. Just because you know how to work an iPhone better than someone else does not mean that you have more wisdom than they do. There's so much wisdom that comes with those years of experience, that a wise person will mine that wisdom. They will pull that out of them. When you begin mocking and making jokes and laughing, talking about how stupid the people who are trying to correct you are, but it's good. Teenagers never do that. Never mind. So the other one, they ignore it and make excuses. This is all the things that wisdom is saying. You got angry and you refused me. You mocked me and you laughed at me. You ignored me and you made excuses to me. These are all the ways that wisdom says people respond to her. My wife and I love this phrase. It makes us open up with joy as parents in just a minute. When I hear our children, when we tell them to do something and they respond, just a minute, we just, oh, what wonderful children we're raising. This is wonderful. Say it more often to us, please. You're getting the sarcasm, right? Yeah, I'll do that after. I'll do that when. I'll get to that. Yeah, but. Those are all things that just make parents' hearts explode. They ignore it and make excuses. Last point. You don't have to pursue folly. Remember all the stuff I was telling you about wisdom? You have to seek it. You have to search for her. You have to want it. You have to hold on to it. None of that applies to foolishness. You don't have to seek foolishness. You don't have to seek folly. She will come after you. I've been debating about how to say this all week. When I was a young man, raging with hormones and reading Proverbs, Proverbs 2, Proverbs 5, Proverbs 6, Proverbs 7, they all talk about this strange woman who pursues these men and comes after them. And I can remember reading Proverbs thinking, where did Solomon grow up? Because women around my parts don't chase me down like Solomon seems to be so worried that women are going to chase his son down. What kind of women were these that Solomon was around that they laid awake at night thinking how they were going to trap the next man? And where can I find some of these women? I do not think that was Solomon's point when he wrote about the strange women. Now, as an adult looking back, I read those, and it is amazing. I think sexual fornication is one instance of foolishness and of folly. But he personifies folly as a strange woman, the same way he personifies wisdom as this woman in Proverbs 2, in Proverbs 4, in Proverbs 9. Wisdom is a woman calling out to you and saying, come chase me, come chase me, come chase me. And Proverbs 2, 5, 6, and 7, folly is a woman who is chasing the young people. Folly is a woman who is after you. She prepares herself. She puts perfume and makeup on. And she hides for you, and as you're walking by, she jumps out and says, "There you are, I've been looking for you." You don't have to pursue folly. She will seduce you. She will come after you. Let me just be real open for a second. One of the first and most dangerous times this happened was when my older brother showed me a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. As a young boy, this strange woman, Folly, jumped out at me and grabbed my attentions. All of a sudden, my eyes were open to things that they had never seen before. And this woman, Folly, she seduces you. Proverbs 7, verse 13, she caught him and kissed him. With an impudent face, she said to him, "I have peace offerings with me. Today I have paid my vows, so I came out to meet you, diligently to seek your face." You see the opposite? Wisdom says, "Seek after me." Folly says, "I came and I looked for you and I found you. I have spread my bed with tapestry, colored coverings of Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with love, for my husband is not at home. He is going on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home at the appointed day. With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield." And young people, young men, like me, you may not know any women like this that come after you and that are just dead bent on getting you to like them. But I'm telling you, folly is seducing you. Folly is coming after you. If we could sit down and talk, I could probably show you time after time after time that this woman has already seduced you, has already grabbed you, has already pulled you back to her room, and has already taken you. Just think with me about how many times we're offered shortcuts. We're offered cheats. When you cheat on a test instead of doing the schoolwork, folly has seduced you and has taken you. Ladies, no, that's not fair. When you want to lose weight and the TV says you can take a pill and lose weight, that is the voice of folly telling you, "Come do it this way. It's easy. There's no cost. There's no sacrifice. Come get stolen water with me." Over and over and over again, folly tells you, "Come to me. Come here. I can give it to you easily. I can give it to you quickly. I can give you what you want without all the work that wisdom is going to make you do." So I want to close with a terribly painful illustration of folly seducing a young person. I mentioned that Todd and Kim lost their youngest teenager this week. And I asked Todd, "What should I say to the church? How should I talk about it?" He said, "Please tell them what happened." Wednesday night, Grady, his 16-year-old son, decided, for whatever reason, to take his own life, to kill himself. So here is a young man who probably didn't have women trying to seduce him, but who was absolutely being seduced by folly. Do you hear me? Here is folly telling this young person, "This is easier. This will solve all your problems. This will take care of everything. Come here, come here, come here. Stolen water is sweet. Bread eaten in secret is delicious." And Grady listened. Grady was taken. Verse 22 of Proverbs 7, immediately he went after her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till an arrow struck in his liver, as a bird hastens to the snare. He did not know it would cost his life. Now, therefore, listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your way turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For she has cast down many wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. Her way is the way to the grave, descending to the chambers of death. You see, wisdom says, come here, build a house with me, slaughter meat with me, mix wine with me, and I will show you some of the most wonderful things you'll ever experience. And folly says, that's way too much work. That's way too much effort. That's way too much sacrifice. Follow me. I've stolen water. I've got stolen bread. It'll be easy. Everything will be okay. And not only in Grady's life did it lead to destruction, but in hundreds of lives that loved Grady and knew Grady, their hearts are being ripped out because of foolishness, because folly won the day over wisdom. And teenagers, your parents sometimes, it seems like they've lost their minds the way they're reacting and what they're doing. And it's because they see folly calling out to you, and they see wisdom calling out to you. And when you start listening to foolishness, to folly, and when you start going towards her and getting closer to her house and start walking in her ways, your parents might literally start to lose their minds. Because they see that she leads to destruction. She puts everything good she has up front. She puts every positive thing she could possibly say. She promises you it. It'll be great, it'll be fun, it'll be fantastic, it'll be easy. And we have lived long enough to know that her back door is the back door to the grave, to destruction, to sorrow, to tears. She will not tell you about that. And the people around you who love you will not. They love you too much to let you go to folly and say, yeah, let's do this. They care about you too much to let you go into foolishness. One of the things Todd asked me to tell us as a church, I asked for advice on parenting. You see number 3, this is something that someone else sent me. Spend time in prayer for and with your teenager. So much interaction with your teenager is superficial, prayer is not. He said, tell people to pray with their children. So often we try to come up with our own answers, our own thinking. We try to tell them what's right. We try to explain what's right. And he said, I wish I would have prayed more. Just not trying to give my own understanding, not trying to give my own ideas, but just take them to God in prayer. Something else, I realize I'm 15 minutes over time. Something else that has crystallized in my heart as I've been preparing this sermon and then the events of this week. I am concerned that parents carry a lot of guilt about the choices of their teenagers. There are so many parents who feel like the choices their teenagers make somehow dictates whether they're good parents or bad parents, whether they've done a good job or a bad job. And Proverbs, if it teaches us anything else, it teaches us that each of us makes our own decisions. You cannot parent well enough to ensure that your teenager decides what you want them to decide, decides what God wants them to decide. There's no parent out there that can do that. And teenage parents of teenagers seem to be carrying, as they've written me their advice, I hear these hearts who seem to be carrying this burden of, my teenager messed up and therefore I've messed up. My teenager made a bad decision and therefore I've done something wrong. And I want to tell you as a pastor, I do not believe that. Teenagers will make their own decisions. Teenagers, you are responsible for your decisions. There are incredible people who have come from some of the worst parents possible. But they have decided, I'm not going to follow that path. I'm going to listen to wisdom. And there are some of the most despicable people who have come from parents who have loved them and cared for them and tried to teach them what was right. And they've decided, I don't care. I'm not going to listen to wisdom. I am going to follow folly. The last thing, God himself had teenagers who rebelled against him. Think about all of God's children. Start with Adam and Eve, rebelled against him. You think about the family of Abraham and the Jews, rebelled against him. You think about the church. Time after time, the church has rebelled against her God. So if you're going to throw stones and say any parent who has a teenager who has made bad decisions, it's the parent's fault, you need to begin with God. You need to explain to me how God has failed his children and what God did wrong that his children have rebelled against him. I'm not saying parents don't have an influence. You don't have a part, and you don't need to take responsibility for what and how you teach your teenagers. But I was overwhelmed this week by the amount of guilt that parents are carrying about their teenagers. It is wrong. We live in an age where we want to do everything for our children, and it seems like it's gotten to the point where we even want to take responsibility for their bad decisions. Thank you, Daylin. Is that that's enough? Close the sermon. All right, let's pray. God, I cry out to you for our young people. I cry out to you for so many who are sitting in this sermon who may or may not even understand what I'm talking about. I cry out that they would hear the voice of wisdom, that you would awaken in them a fear of the Lord that would drive them to pursue wisdom, to pursue you. I cry out for those in this room, children, young people, adults, old people, who are being seduced at this very moment by folly, by this woman who is trying to convince them that the easy way, the pleasurable, quick solution is the right way. God, help them to see that her steps lead to death. Help them to see the pain and the bitterness and the destruction that is right behind that facade of pleasure. And yet, God, we can't even correct a fool because he will just hate us for doing it. So God, I pray that you would take a 2x4 to their heads. Somehow break them out of their foolishness. Break them out of their bent towards destruction. And line them up with a hunger and a thirst for you. We ask in Christ's name, amen. I have taken all of your social time, so please go immediately to the nursery and children's church and relieve them, or they will come after me. Thank you.